Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Missed calls, slow replies, messages scattered everywhere. If you're running a business, that's not just annoying, it's revenue slipping away. That's where Quo comes in, spelled Q-U-O. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2. One shared business number for calls and texts. Stop missing customers. Start capturing every opportunity. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/tech. That's QUO.com/tech. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers.
Hello and welcome back to the Psycholegal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist. And unfortunately, Brooke, our attorney, is not here today. She's not feeling well. So I have my husband, Steve, here, also known as producer Steve. Say hello.
Oh, hello. Hello.
It's an audio podcast.
Yes.
You have to talk.
Yes, I know. And I'm responsible for producing the audio. So
Yes.
Hi.
So, hi. So today we're going to cover, there's this new documentary series, though some episodes came out, I want to say earlier this year, last year, called Homicide, Los Angeles. There was a Homicide, New York. That's the other season that came out earlier this year. I thought it was really well done. I thought each episode in that series was well done. So when I saw that they had one for Los Angeles, I thought this would be a great thing to cover. And this is the first episode of the series called Hunting Phil Spector. And it's a perfect one for Steve because Steve is a musician and knows a lot about music and knows a lot about all of these things. So I thought this would be a good one for us.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Also, top 10 Netflix. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That too.
Finger
Watch
on
it
the
before
pulse.
before they raise the prices. All right. So where to begin? So let's start with Phil Spector, and we'll then get into the story. So tell us, can you give us a brief introduction to Phil Spector?
Sure. Well, not going any further to this whole story, but Phil Spector is a very well-known, renowned music producer, starting with probably the late 50s, early 60s, probably mostly 60s and 70s, I'd say, is where he's most prominent. And he was well known for creating this thing called the Wall of Sound.
Yes.
Now,
what is that?
ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm about to tell you the Wall of Sound. Because I had
that part out.
No, we're not going to. I'm not cutting anything. I'm not editing. I'm not editing myself. The Wall of Sound is something he developed, and basically is this. He was, instead of most bands go into a studio, there's guitar, there's bass, there's drums, there's keyboards, there's a singer. That's it. It's like 4. But what he did was he would have like 4 guitars, 4 pianos, 2 bass players, multiple singers. He'd put them all in the same room, and he'd have a lot of them play the same thing. But what he'd also do is he'd put them all in an echo chamber too. So when he's recording this stuff, it would just create this like really, really thick recording. And like, if you want to learn a lot more, there's an awesome documentary called The Wrecking Crew. It's a good music documentary. It focuses more on a lot of the session players that were like in and out of his studio a lot than actually Phil Spector himself. But you do learn a lot. Even Cher is in there. Cher is like, actually, I learned this today. Cher sang background for the Ronettes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That be my baby.
Yeah, and that's a Phil Spector. Because isn't the Ronette? So he was his first wife.
One of his wives. Yeah, it's Ronnie Spector.
Ronnie Spector.
Who's in the Ronettes. And Cher used to sing background for them.
Wow.
Now, so I also learned some cool examples of this wall of sound stuff is like, if you listen to the song You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers, it's a lot of the voices are just really like carrying and thick and kind of weaving in and out of each other. Other examples like the Beatles, The Long and Winding Road, and then George Harrison's that song My Sweet Lord, or those are just some examples of the wall of sound recordings that he did.
Yeah, I've always wondered what that wall of sound is. So thank you.
Yeah. One other thing I learned about him, and this is part of that, researching out and learning, and I do want to go back and rewatch that Wrecking Crew documentary. I watched it a long time ago. Yeah. It's really good. But a lot of musicians said Phil was very demanding in the studio. Some people even said like he would make them work hours and hours before he even press record. There was one guy who just like couldn't take it anymore. His hands were tired. He's like picked up his guitar and left,
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, we will learn in this next documentary. We're going to learn about one of Phil's tactics for getting people to fall in line. So this story really starts on February 3rd, 2003, when the Alhambra Police Department get a 911 call from someone who's saying that there's a woman has been found dead. And a music producer is involved. So they do. One of the things that I like about the series is they get into the city itself. So the Homicide, New York, they were sort of like, they'd show you a map and like, this is this section of the city and this is what happens here. And what's interesting about talking about LA is huge. It's this giant, diverse place where you've got people who have nothing, Skid Row, which is well known to be this area of LA where it's very dangerous. And then you've got these multi-million-dollar mansions, $100 million, $200 million mansions on the beaches of Malibu. So there's a wide variety of people in LA. So we meet the lead homicide detective, Rich Tomlin, and he's one of our main narrators. And he's talking about Alhambra. So this is another kind of odd thing is I think people write like Phil Spector lives in Alhambra, which is like a quiet, sleepy residential place. I don't know how he ended up out there.
Right. It's like they took one of those Malibu, mansions and just dropped it right in the middle of this place called Alhambra.
Yeah.
Really.
So Alhambra, the police department, they could not handle a case like this. They could not handle a murder. So they had to bring in other detectives. But the 911 call was from Phil Spector's driver. And when they get there, Phil Spector is ranting and raving, and they see this woman slumped over in a chair, and Spector claims that she killed herself. So that starts this entire saga of what's happening. And then the series gets into Phil Spector's background and all the people that he worked with. And, a lot of the things that you talked about, Beatles and Grammys and Tina Turner. And they, they were looking around this house. And that was the other part of it too, is they talked about how disgusting the house was. How gross, rat droppings.
Rats and mice running around everywhere.
Yeah. So he I don't know. Before this incident, I can't remember what I thought about when I thought about Phil Spector. I think he was just sort of known in the zeitgeist in the world before this incident as someone who was just kind of a kooky, an eccentric, kooky producer. Mm-hmm. But I guess this was a well-known fact that he was very violent and liked to brandish guns.
Yeah. And when they play, like, at the beginning of this episode, when they start to play his rant, I'm like, oh my God, this guy is, Am I allowed to say batshit crazy?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I felt he was like, just hearing his rant about, oh, this woman came in, she shot herself right in the face, blah, 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 F this, F that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, he's just batshit. I'm like, what is up with this dude?
Yeah. Well, and I think that you can get a sense very quickly of him and his personality and how he deals with things, because anytime you get somebody who instantly it's on them, it's their fault, not me, don't look at me, they're crazy, they're bad, pointing the finger, that tells you a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean someone's guilty. It just means that they have no awareness and no ability to take any kind of responsibility, anything. I don't think you have to take responsibility for a murder that you didn't commit. But I do think that if you got this horrible situation and this person who has died in your foyer, why are you calling them batshit crazy and nutty and as if she's inconvenienced you? That's really what it was. It was like as if she wandered off and died on his lawn, and now he's got to deal with all this.
Well, let's
you created this.
Let's just get this straight. I called him batshit crazy, but you're saying that he called her batshit crazy.
Yes.
So there's a lot lot of projecting of batshit here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Just want to
I'm wearing off on you. Projecting after 20 years of marriage.
Yeah, I know some therapy terms.
Therapy. So they soon discover and this is very interesting, and it kind of all pieces itself together. So they see a couple different things on the floor. The first one is they see this deadbolt lock that's broken off. And it's lying next to the gun. And it's really, how would you describe it, Steve? Like I kept trying to write this down and put it in words, but we all know what a deadbolt is. So that flat lock part handle.
Right. I couldn't even tell. It looked like something that just like someone bought something from the hardware store, opened up the package, and then the big piece that you're supposed to put on the door falls to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big brass, like a little brass bar or something like that.
Yeah, the brass bar that you latch onto that actually gets you out, that unlocks and locks the deadbolt.
I couldn't tell it was a turny thing or a slide. It was the turny
thing.
Okay.
It's the turny thing. Yeah. And they found a drawer that was open and an empty gun holster. And then the gun was on the floor. So they're looking at all this, trying to figure out what is going on. And so they finally get the ID of the woman. Her name is Lana Clarkson. And she is a working actress known to be in a lot of B movies. She's tall, she's blonde, she's very beautiful. And we meet her mother and her friends. And, Lana had just gotten this job as a hostess at the House of Blues in LA. She had, she was a working actor for many, many years. But she broke both of her wrists. It was a huge setback. And I think she just needed to make money. So she took this job, and she's obviously very beautiful. So she's someone that someone would want to be a hostess.
Sorry to interrupt. You glossed over the fact that they did show some footage of her with the Hoff. You don't hassle the Hoff. So.
No. Yeah, that's right. She was on an episode. That must have been Knight Rider. No.
Knight Rider.
This was Knight Rider. Hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, she had a pretty, it looked like when you watch a lot of these, it was a lot of 80s and some early 90s. I've heard her name before
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this particular part of the fact that it was this working actress who, never really had a lot of fame, but was happy, liked her life. And there's this juxtaposition between Lana and Phil Spector of here you've got someone who is is there a better music producer? Is there another well-known producer like Phil Spector that we know? I think we know about producers a lot more today than we ever did, but
true. Yeah, but back then.
Yeah. Was there anyone else?
Well, there was George Martin from the Beatles, but he was in, he's in Abbey Road in England, obviously. And then nowadays you'd think of like someone like Rick Rubin or something like that. But, he's so busy practicing yoga. I don't think he'd shoot anybody. But,
yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, but.
So anyway, so there's this big difference. I had never heard of any music producers, but I knew who Phil Spector was. And especially when this, all of this happened. And so this is a big theme in this entire story, which is about, this big time person that's at the very tippy top and has all this money and accolades, and everyone's, falling at his feet. And then you've got this other woman who's what makes up a lot of LA, which is working actors. Actors, they don't have tons of money. They're not living in the thing, but they make enough from acting to support themselves. So this becomes a huge part of the media storm and everything that happens. So they find Phil. Phil's got blood on his he's got this white jacket. It's got blood all over his jacket. He gets arrested. His attorney posts bail and he goes back home. And they're like, okay, the detectives are like, we got to figure out what's going on. Is this an accident? Was this a homicide? Or was this really suicide? Because Spector was claiming suicide and wanted them to just, and I get the sense with Phil, I think he thought they were just going to be like, oh, okay, suicide. Great. Write it up. Let's take her body away. Okay, bye, Phil. I really do think he thought that's what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But we meet Andrea De Souza. This is the driver. The driver, yeah. So he's the one that made the 911 call. And he tells him about the night, right? I picked up Phil 7:00 the night before. We went to dinner. He had dinner and drinks in West Hollywood. Around 1, we went to House of Blues. And apparently, Lana did not recognize Phil Spector. That apparently she thought that he was a woman. And then she was told, oh, no, you've got to be nice to this person. So she's like, apologizes and all of that. And then we see some clips of the two of them leaving at around 2 a.m. And Phil is very, very drunk to the point where she's helping him into the car, into the limousine. Yeah. And so this I thought was really interesting because they were talking about because they were talking to Lana's friends to find out, why do you think she would go? Because you can see very clearly, he's very drunk. She's sober. She's finishing up work. Why? How did this happen? And I think it was because Phil was hitting on her and saying to her, well, come back to Alhambra, come back to my mansion, come back here. It'll be so great. And I think she probably thought, oh, this is an experience. That's what I would think.
they also mentioned she's over 6 foot tall, and he's 5'2" or something like that.
5'6", not that short. Okay, 5'2".
He appears really small, and
but he's a slight man. You know, he's not very heavy. But she was. So I think she felt like, oh God, well, I'm a foot taller than him, and what do I have to be worried about?
In my eyes, I don't think she went with him to go, oh, I need to make sure he gets to sleep okay. I don't know. I don't know.
No. So anyway, then the driver stays in his car. He parks out back, and about 5 a.m. he hears this loud popping sound, and he gets out of the car, and then all of a sudden he sees Spector coming out the back door with blood on his hands and face. And Spector says, I think I killed somebody. And so the driver starts, I thought this was so interesting. The driver starts running. Because he's worried about his life. And it's like, oh, I never even thought about that. Why would you run? But it's this guy just killed someone with a gun. Get away from him.
Hold on, though. He's a driver. Why doesn't he just drive off?
That's true. Why didn't he get in the car?
Yeah. He starts running. He's got access to this limo. Well, I'd floor it out of there.
Well, this is the best, too, because this is so Hollywood, LA. He calls Phil's manager first. And then it calls 911. You got to call your manager first and get your story straight.
Or the fixer,
whomever that is. So they do an autopsy. There's one gunshot wound, and she died instantly. But they noticed that the gunshot angle was pointed down, and they're like, that doesn't really work for suicide. What's going on here?
Down through the jawbone, right?
Yeah. So they start to explore, is this suicide? Was she depressed? Does she have financial issues? And that's when they learn very quickly, she was happy. She had this accident. She was recovering. She was excited about this job. There's nothing that was stopping her in her life. She was not depressed. And I also want to say that with depression and suicide, people don't go over to other people's houses
Especially
to necessarily
someone they
commit
don't know. Yeah,
suicide unless there's a particular reason. Like unless you have some sort of relationship and it's part of this toxic relationship that you have, or you're, oh, here, I'm going to kill myself in front of you. But no one goes to a stranger's house and then hangs out with them and then decides, maybe tonight's the night.
That's a good point based on your therapy knowledge.
Yes.
But yeah, I didn't think about that. But like, yeah, don't people want to be seen in a way if they do it, or be in a place where they're discovered, or, leave a note kind of thing, or?
Yeah. Well, I think that part depends, right?
Yeah,
some people do, some people don't. Some people think a lot about who might discover them and prepare, make different choices. And other people know certain people are going to discover them and they make certain choices.
Yeah.
So again, that just made zero sense. And yeah, I mean, they talked to her friends. They said, and what she did was a very, like I said, LA thing. She's networking. Mm-hmm. Phil Spector has power. Phil Spector is, still has some cachet. So of course she was going to want to meet someone and connect with someone. And if you can build a relationship with them, that's helpful. That's a big part. It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
So I think it was a little bit of this combination of, I can build a relationship with him and, he's tiny. Nothing's going to happen. So we talked about the wall of sound. So this is the part that I don't think what had ever been revealed from what I remember until this case came out, was just how violent and gun-loving Phil Spector had been. And so when this case happened, it was a little bit of like, what happened? Okay. And then all of a sudden, all of these stories start coming out and from big musicians like John Lennon. They started naming all of these people that he had intimidated over the years, to the point where if someone said, no, I want to take a break, or no, I'm done, he'd pull out a gun and put it to your head.
Leonard Cohen, famously.
Yes.
He's like, Leonard Cohen did a take. He's like, I'm tired. I want to go home. I'm done. And then Phil Spector pulls out a gun. He's like, no, you go and do another take. And Leonard Cohen's like, what?
Yeah. And did it. Yeah. And that was the thing that was really interesting. He did it, and he said, and I think he kept showing up. That's the other part of it. Like, wouldn't that be your last day?
Right.
You get out?
What do you rather have, the gun or the wall of sound? I don't know. Yeah. That's wow.
But I think that's the part that is so hard to wrap our brains around sometimes, of how, one person controls so much, and they make a simple choice or decision, and it could, your career's over. And people work so hard to, you work so hard to get attention and seen. And then finally you're being seen. You're finally sort of reaching this place that you've always wanted to be. And someone's going to yank it out of your hand. And it's like, oh, okay, okay, I'll keep going. And we've always heard about demanding producers and demanding directors and so on. But this one was pulling out the gun every time someone said no to you is a different story. So apparently he loved guns, like brandished them constantly. And I guess this was a known fact. Did you know this about him? Okay. So that's the other part of it too, which is, there's a lot, it seems to be there were these insider secrets, for so long. I mean, there were a lot of, I was in LA in the 90s, and like Harvey Weinstein, it was kind of an open secret that he was a pig.
Right.
But it didn't kind of go any farther. It didn't, people knew it. But
once these people are finally, taken in and brought to trial, then everything comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Psych Legal Pop, we'll be back after these messages. Are you feeling lost or uncertain about your future? It's time to discover the true you. This is Tess Brigham from Psych Legal Pop Podcast, and I want to tell you about my book, True You. In True You, I delve into the 6 key issues we all face during our quarter-life crises. From career dilemmas to relationship struggles, this book provides simple tools and techniques to navigate each challenge. True You is your roadmap to personal growth. Even if you're not experiencing a quarter-life crisis, True You will help you get to know yourself on a deeper level. If you're ready to unlock your true potential and create a life you love, pick up your copy of True You today. You can find more information on my website, www.tessbrigham.com, or it's available to purchase at Amazon.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
So, yeah, Phil Spector is a dangerous person. And so they get the lab results from the DNA. There's blood splatter all over his white jacket. And there's a bloody diaper on the floor, which I guess apparently gun enthusiasts will wrap their gun or clean their gun with a diaper. That was new for me. But so they found Lana's blood was on Phil's jacket, on the diaper, all of it. And would it be the coroner or the medical
examiner?
Yes, thank you. Declared it's not a suicide. Maybe it could be an accident, but what happened is not what Phil Spector said. So September 22nd, 2003, this is 7 months after the death, the coroner finally declares it was a homicide. So, and this comes up to the next kind of really interesting part of this Phil Spector case, because Brooke and I have talked about, we covered the OJ, the life and death of Nicole Brown Simpson, and we've talked about the Menendez brothers. And so this was a huge case for the LA County District.
Yeah.
And they really held off on bringing charges right away. I think there was a lot of pushback of like, what are you doing? Aren't you going to charge him? But they were so burned by OJ. I think it's the OJ effect. They were so burned by OJ. And it's interesting. We meet one of the, do we meet one of the attorneys that was on the OJ case?
Well, Robert Shapiro was one of his attorneys for a little while.
Sorry. So Robert Shapiro was Phil Spector's attorney and obviously OJ's, but no, I'm talking about one of the lead investigators or attorneys that we met. Oh. We met a guy from the DA's office.
Right.
I could have sworn one of them worked on OJ, but what they talked about and they admitted was we made a lot of mistakes with OJ and we rushed with OJ because we felt this pressure. So we're not going to feel this pressure again. And we're going to wait until we're going to bring charges. But they really needed this to work. They hadn't had, it was something like, it had been 40 years since they had won like a major media trial. So they needed a win for sure.
Yeah. In the meantime, the media is like, okay, OJ's done. Now we're looking for the next big thing, So it's like, woohoo, we got one.
Yeah. I mean, prior to that, right, there was OJ, there was Robert Blake. That day he got off on that, right?
I have to say, I keep getting, up until I watched this, I kept kind of intertwining Robert Blake and Phil Spector. For some reason.
Their faces
and their just cases.
Yeah.
I would often confuse them. And until recently, I rewatched Lost Highway, and Robert Blake is a sicko in that movie. And then you realize, 2 years after that, Robert Blake shot his wife. But yeah.
Well, I think they're also both. I think Robert Blake is really into guns.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, Beretta, come on.
Well, not even that though. He went to a restaurant with his wife and brought a gun.
Right, yeah, I know.
his car. I mean, it's
anyways. But yeah, I was getting them confused with Phil Spector for a little while until this documentary set me straight a little bit. Yeah.
Well, see, aren't you glad?
Yes.
Aren't you glad you're here?
Even though I'm not a true crime guy, really.
Yes, I will say, because it was hard for us to pick something because Steve does not like true crime, and I can't believe that I never realized that. I assumed that you did because I liked it.
Oh, you wouldn't have married me if that were the case. Well,
no, it's not that. It's not the case. It's not necessarily that case. It's more of Gosh, I really wasn't paying attention. That's not very nice of me. Just assuming putting something on you because I like it.
I fit in more into the music. I mean, you watch true crime. And it's funny, actually, when I was watching this, some names came up. Dick Wolf and the other guy, Alan Jackson.
Producer.
Alan Jackson is another guy. And I recognize those names from looking over your shoulder in the past month or two.
Oh, because I've been watching Chicago PD.
We're watching tons of stuff. And I just those names, Alan Jackson and Dick Wolf. And I've seen those names on your iPad as I'm just walking by. So I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. They're familiar names to me now.
Well, Dick Wolf is huge. He's Law and Order. That's like his, and he does all these Law and Orders and he produces a ton of stuff. So he's kind of like the...
Yeah, and he's got a kick-ass name.
Yeah, it is, actually. Dick Wolf. So, where was I? Oh, yes. And so this is basically during this time, when they're trying to build this case, Phil Spector does what a lot of people do is, and this also shows you how slimy he is that he started giving tons of interviews. Like anybody that would talk to him, he would talk to them. And he started giving all of these interviews. He'll talk to anybody. And he claimed that Lana, quote unquote, kissed the gun. But there was this real hostility towards her. That's what I was talking about. Like from moment one. And I swear to God, I think he is so wrapped up in himself and his own stuff that it was almost like, oh crap, I killed her. Now this is really going to put a damper on, my life. I got to figure this out now versus she's a human being and look at what I did. And so it makes me wonder about if there are things in the past that we don't really know, like literally buried bodies,
Oh yeah,
somewhere,
right, somewhere in that castle, right?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe that's why all the rats and mice are running around.
Yeah. So his PR team went all on Lana. They described her as this bimbo, this B-movie actress. Like they really, and I remember this, they really made her seem out to be kind of a loser. Like she's some B-movie actress. She's such a loser. And again, judging a woman for going home with a man at 2:00 in the morning, like, this B-movie actress who never made it a success. She is such a loser and such a wannabe. She goes home with Phil Spector, thinking she's going to have something. And then it goes wrong. And, and then she, according to Spector, kills herself. Yeah. And I think you can see how they just started, and this is, you can see how they started to go down the same road as what happened with OJ and Nicole, right? They started slamming right during the OJ trial. Nicole was a bad mom. Nicole was this. Nicole did drugs. Nicole, right? So let's bash this woman and make her a non-person. But then apparently the investigators start going out and learning more about Phil Spector. And what they hear from everybody is Phil is 90% charming, 10% trouble. And again, it was like there were tons of people, they said, that wouldn't go on the record. Like they were so afraid of him. But in the past, he had been arrested for gun possession. He had lots of guns, and it was apparently this comes out, common knowledge. He would wave guns around, and that was his thing. He liked to intimidate people. Yeah. I understand why. It sounds like he's a very small in many ways, man. And I can understand that desire to be big and desire to be a tough guy.
Well, yeah. Didn't they get like 5 other people who claimed that he brought, or am I jumping ahead? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. They had like 5 other people on the stand who claimed, we brought me back to the house. he did this thing with the deadbolt.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, he'd never take the deadbolt off the door.
Yeah. So they learn that Phil has a pattern where he likes to keep, and they use this word keep people, both men and women. Though the 5 people that testified were all women. So I don't know what other man he was holding hostage. But so what would happen is you would tell Phil, I want to go. And then he would, I don't know what exactly, they described it as like he would disappear for many hours. And you're kind of left in this foyer waiting. And it was like, you're going to go when I say you can go. And what would happen is he would say, you know, well, okay, yeah, sure, I'll be back. And then he wouldn't come back and people would try to leave. And the deadbolt, you can't, because he took the thing off the deadbolt. You cannot leave. I find it hard to believe that that's the only door. That's the other part of it. I was kind of like, then why couldn't they, if he disappeared for a while, why couldn't they walk to a different door?
I mean, he could have brandished a gun on them. And
that's what I'm thinking.
Have that fear that you know, it's the fight or flight thing. Yeah. They just can't move. I don't know. Because
we see Lana's body in that foyer and in that chair that you would sit on, like if you're waiting for someone.
It's like a waiting room, yeah.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is, you know that she was like, I want to go home. I'd like to leave, sees that she can't do that, maybe sits down in the chair and says like, or maybe stands up, who knows, and says, I don't want to be here anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't like, you know, I want out. And then they found the gun holster in a cabinet drawer, right near where her chair was. It was almost kind of like he reached right over to this gun and was like, no, you're not going.
Right.
So, yes. So that was a big piece. We're seeing a lot of the tropes of a lot of these true crime shows, which is he loved control. He wanted to control. He loved control. And this was just another way for him to control people, control what they're doing or not doing, control, right, their movements. You know, have you ever wanted to control someone that much? I don't understand these people that want all of this control.
No, I don't understand that at all. It's crazy.
Okay.
The other thing I've been thinking about, because it never came up again, and I'm just thinking about it right now, is like how much she had to drink that night. That they never played anything further about that in the trial or anything like that.
Yeah,
you know?
They don't talk about what his blood alcohol level.
Right,
I'm sure it came in.
Defense would have said something, or the
no. The prosecution.
Yeah.
Because the drinking doesn't look good for him. I'm sure as part of his smear campaign towards Lana, they were probably saying she was drunk, she's high, she's this, she's that. And I don't think she had anything really in her system, maybe a drink or two.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So
it's just this repeated behavior, really.
It's kind of the same thing over and over again. So they found over 20 incidents of Phil Spector doing this. And so the judge was like, well, that's just way too much. Let's cut it down. So they had 5. And they show us clips from these women testifying. And it was like the same story is being told over and over and over again. Like, this is his MO. So the defense then, of course, they put on their case, and they needed to make Lana seem like this really depressed person. They played these clips from her films to make her look like a lesser person. Like, almost, it was almost like, oh, she was in this B movie that's not very big. So then, therefore, you should be, she should be sad, and you should feel sorry for her. And that's why she would, you know, do such a thing.
Yeah, it was like this B movie called Barbarians or something. Oh yeah.
Like that, Had you heard of any of these?
No.
They mention of hers?
No, but I mean, she's got a very Hollywood name, you know.
Yeah, she does. She does. So on September 2007, 5 months into the trial, the defense rests. So the jury goes out. The jury is out for 14 days. 14, which is crazy. I cannot imagine 2 weeks of deliberating, and they could not get to any kind of conclusion. I think that I didn't write down exactly how it was divided. We met with one of the jurors. It turned out to be a mistrial. We met with one of the jurors, and he was very much pro convicting Phil Spector, but I guess there were some holdouts that really
maybe 12.
There's always 12 jurors, honey.
Oh wait, no, sorry.
There's always 12 jurors.
Okay.
So if it's all 12, they've reached a decision.
So
you've got to get on the true crimes.
Off the record, I managed to dodge jury duty pretty well every time I'm called. So
yeah, well, FYI, there's 12 of them.
Well, I thought they said maybe they said a number. I forget how many they did want to convict him, but I don't know.
Well, I'm sure. I think it was. I don't know. I think it was a good number wanted to convict him. And then there were some people who just didn't know. And there were a few people that were for acquittal. And they talk about this too. This is part of the problem and why it's been so hard to convict celebrities is that we automatically assume, we make this assumption that because someone like Phil Spector can create this amazing music and do these groundbreaking things, therefore, he, is a good person or a kind person or a thoughtful person or not a mentally ill person or any of that.
Yeah.
And so we tend to give celebrities the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to see them. Like if we like them and like their work, you don't want to see them in another way because it does. I mean, I'm sorry, but like every time I hear a Michael Jackson song, it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that same feeling that it once did because you just kind of know now. So anyway, they tried. So they tried the case again. And this time, April 13th, 2009. So we're now, 6 years after the murder. He's guilty of second-degree murder, and he gets 19 years to life. Now, what I think that tells you that this is a man's world is Phil Spector, in the middle of this case, in the middle of all of this, he gets married. He found someone to date him, marry him, while he's waiting to go on trial for murdering a woman that came to his home. Like, I was like, oh, this is such a man's world.
God.
Such a man's world that he can find someone that would want to date him.
What wife number is that, too? I'm wondering.
I don't know. I didn't really do a lot of research on Phil Spector and in terms of beyond this case.
Right. The only marriage I know about is the Ronnie Spector, and that was like in the 70s for maybe 10 years or less. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, I'm curious about how do you feel about all this? Like being a musician yourself, and I can imagine prior to 2003 that you probably, admired someone like Phil Spector. Does this bother you? Does it make it hard for you to listen to his music?
To be honest, he never really came across my my turntable, so to speak, and that's why I was like talking about that documentary, The Wrecking Crew, because you learn a lot more. I never really, some of that doo-wop stuff and, songs like the Do Run Run, remember that one? That was one of his.
Yeah,
I think that might have been the Ronettes.
And then Sean Cassidy remade it.
Sure.
I remember that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're Gen Xers.
Yeah. So, but yeah, obviously the Beatles stuff might have, but I was always assuming that was George Martin. I didn't know that, they broke off and did some stuff. And now I'm learning a little bit more, but it just, I don't know if I was in the studio with this guy and he pulled a gun out, I'd take my bass and hit the road, or I'd take my bass and hit him across the forehead. I don't know.
Really?
Well, I probably not.
With a gun in his hand?
Pointing a gun at me, but, hey, he and I are the same height, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little more wider in the shoulders than him. But I don't know. I wouldn't work with someone like that. I just really wouldn't. But
what if, hold on. So what if it was, this could make your career, your whole life could be different. You could be married to someone much younger and thinner and blonder right now if you were a big rock star.
I don't like blondes.
But you could, right? Like, what if he held your career in his hands?
Yeah, It's hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it was never really the music I loved, but again, it's hard to put myself in that position.
But so you're not bothered by So when you hear a Michael Jackson song, for example, you're not kind of like, oh, I love this song. And, oh God.
It's like half and half, really.
Yeah.
It's like, you still kind of, it's the groove stays with you,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I know James Brown wasn't the best husband in the world, but I still
that is true.
I still can get down to James Brown, and
that is true. That is
he's
true.
the godfather in my eyes. I mean,
and I guess
it's hard. It's hard. Where do you draw that line?
Yeah.
Or where do you put the headphones down? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I ask myself this question all the time with I'm sure we're eating things, doing things, right? We have this Chick-fil-A thing all the time. Like, should we be going to Chick-fil-A?
Yeah,
like, should we be going here? Should we be going there? It's constant. It's like
half the products in our house could probably be removed if we just sat down and
really looked at it
deep. Yeah. It's like, it's exhausting.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I guess you don't necessarily feel differently about people.
Well, I'd say now, after watching this documentary, I know a lot more about the shitty side of him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, before this, I'd be like, wow, the wall of sound's kind of cool. Because that's like, when I listen to stuff, I'm like, I love listening deeper and feeling what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
But like, now that I know how much of a creep he is, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I want to smack him.
Yeah.
He's dead. So he died in prison 2021, I think.
Yes, I know. I was just looking. So he was 81 years old. He was at French Camp, California. Was he French Camp, California?
Oh,
is this where he was housed?
Probably has crepes and croissants all the time. I bet you
think he gets
one of those kind of prisons. I don't know.
Wait, how long? Kidding. So hold on a second. So he then ended up serving. So he served from 2009 to 2021, which is a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Right? What's that, 12 years? Am I doing the math correctly? 12 years. So, yeah. I mean, he was sentenced to 19 years to life. And I mean, I think we knew that he wasn't going to see the light of day. But
he'll come up for parole at some point, I bet you, if he didn't die. But yeah.
Well, no, he had to serve 19 years.
Yeah. Again, this is why, my knowledge of the jury and knowledge of sentences is why I shouldn't fill in for a law expert on a law podcast. But I do share my expertise in other ways. So, yeah, we miss you, Brooke.
Yes.
Come on back.
Well, and the last thing was that we did not talk about was Phil Spector's hair.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So this was the thing. During the trial.
Pictures up. Yeah. There's a couple
during the trial. Yeah. I just thought he had this big head, like curly hair thing the whole time. But apparently he came in wigs.
Oh, it was wigs? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you remember, they showed, like, then he's wearing a short bob.
Yellow.
And then it's, like, longer and feathered.
Yellow. Yeah. It was like weird yellow one.
Yes. This one. Yes.
Terrible.
Oh, here's all of them. None of them are good. None of them are flattering.
That'd be such a good coffee table book. The Wigs of Phil Spector.
Oh, but look, they have his photo from his mugshot. Mugshot. So he had to take the wig off, bald.
Yeah.
So that explains a lot.
I can relate.
Yeah.
Being bald myself.
I know. But you listen, this and a young, very attractive woman married him. I mean, I just to this day, I cannot believe. It's
the castle. I don't know.
It's the castle. It's the money. It's the, I don't know, something.
Where's that driver now? I'm wondering though.
I don't know. Probably back in Italy. He's poor thing. Is he Italian? I thought he was Italian. Traumatized by his experience here in the U.S. But I mean, I think he, unlike other people, sort of didn't want the fame. Mm-hmm. But of all the stories, all of these celebrity stories and celebrity deaths and all these kinds of things that happen, this is one where I do like Nicole Brown Simpson. I feel I'm glad I watched this so I could get to know Lana Clarkson a lot better, to learn about her, because if all you're hearing in the news is she's B-movie actress and she's this, she's that, like, being a B-movie actress is bad, but I'm always amazed how easily influenced I am by just hearing something over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a truth.
Right. Yeah,
So,
what they even said that in there. You hear this from the defense over and over again, and then it becomes the truth.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, this story had a lot of, it had the celebrity aspect, but it also had the power and men and women and, how PR and media, it had everything.
Yeah. And now, I'll hate to admit it, I'm tempted to watch maybe another episode or two of this because it was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's good. True crime is good.
Have you watched any more of the LA episodes?
No.
Because I just want to count, if you do start watching them, I want to count how many of them have that B-roll shot of the highway and traffic. Because that is right at the beginning.
Yes.
Quintessential shot that is in every LA story or homicide.
Well, that's a big part. It's a big part of LA
living. Yep.
Yes. So we highly recommend Homicide Los Angeles. Highly recommend Homicide New York on Netflix. Thank you so much, Steve, for filling in.
You're very welcome.
This week. And very quick, just a few announcements. If you enjoy our podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and review and or subscribe to the podcast. Both help us tremendously. And if you want to hear more from us, we have a Patreon, and go check it out on patreon.com/PsychLegalPop podcast. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters. Handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.